Welcome to Voices of the North. I am your host, John Scarr.
And your co-host, Darlene Phillips.
And today in studio for this episode, we have the newly elected mayor of Brooklyn Park, Hollies Winston. Hollis, how's it going?
Good. Just busy day, but otherwise been pretty good.
Yeah, I feel that too. That actually leads well into my first very difficult question. You're working full-time and you're a mayor. I just want to make sure, how is that possible? And are you okay? Do you need help with anything?
I mean, we could use help. I had a business prior to, being mayor where there was some lobbying and project management. So, we're figuring out a new model for that to work. So it might be a few weeks before I have that model established, but in the meantime, yes, mayor is a lot of work. But I knew that coming in that I would have to change my business model because Brooklyn Park, there's only maybe 500 other cities in the country that are our size or larger. So it takes a lot of work, right? And so I had to make sure that I was aware that I need to change the business model as I get in, right? You're not going to get in and get rich, which is fine, right? Yeah. So I got to find something, though, that find a model that's still sustainable. So we're working on that, but I'm pretty confident that we'll make it work. You want it to be, I'm not as comfortable in that lobbying space for me. I just don't want to create any ethical issues or conflicts of interest. So it's what can we do in terms of a different type of consulting?
Yeah. Can you briefly lay out the role of a mayor? What does a mayor actually do?
Well, I think in a city like Brooklyn Park, traditionally they've kind of presided over the meetings. They're usually president of the Economic Development Association, which is something that Brooklyn Park uses to decide investments in economic development / housing in Brooklyn Park. And you're supposed to help bring together the city council so that you actually have a governing coalition. So that's kind of what's on paper, right? I think what's off paper is you're very much the voice of the city, right? So in Brooklyn Park is divided into West Central and East District, and the mayor is mayor over all of that, right? So you have two electeds from each of those that sits on the city council, and then you have one mayor. So, I'm the one person that can say, well, I speak for the city as a whole, and then the votes kind of back that up as well, right? So I would say it's being the voice of the city as well. But lastly, I would say it's taking, what you're hearing from residents and helping to help the city focus strategically on where it should put its energy. Because, I think if you're on the outside looking in, you think that especially if you work in corporate, you think it's somewhat organized like corporate. And corporate, everything is very hierarchical. And it's clear generally, not always, especially if you worked in project management like I did, but it's generally what different divisions do. And there's some of that within the city, but they're also just managing so much more, right? So police, fire, parks and rec, maintenance, so anything from streets to, if someone has a medical issue, right, they're calling the police. If their streets need to be paved, the city's doing that. We are, helping with coordinating trash. But then these big things like, recreation and youth development and driving down crime. So all of that is under the purview of the city. So then you have to begin to say, we don't want to manage by emergency, which can happen if the city staff don't have a city council and mayor that can give good direction. But if they can give good direction, then you stop managing by emergency and you begin to pick out some priorities, and you could focus on those priorities so that, the city can move to whatever next step or next phase it needs to move to. So I know that's a long answer to a short question, but, there's what it says on paper, then there's really what is actually happening in addition to what's on paper.
Yeah. I think, and you said, you're the voice of the city. I think that's a great explanation. And that's a really interesting point you make too about the difference between running a business versus the abstract problems or challenges that come with running a city. It's not quite a business some of it might translate. But no, I'm just rambling now. I don't know.
No, well, people want it to be, people in corporate and other people want it to be run like a business, right? But business exists solely, and some people will tell you businesses shouldn't solely operate this way, but I have an MBA. They teach you that businesses are supposed to bring the most profit for shareholders, right? So they have that one goal they're supposed to hit, and sometimes it can be to the exclusion of other stakeholders, right? So the general public, the environment, right? Even the government in some cases, right? That's not necessarily taken into account with businesses. Well, the city, all of those stakeholders are at the table: business, corporate, residents, other governments that, county government, state government, they're all at the table. And so you have to kind of balance that in a way that corporations don't really have to balance.
Right. You're like trying to strike that between like balance all of those different interests and find the decision that creates the greatest utility to the city. Yeah.
Could you tell us who Hollies Winston is and what do you stand for as a leader?
That's probably the harder question. I mean, internally you kind of know, but saying it is not always as easy. I would say, judge someone by their fruits and you'll understand what they are. So I've been with my wife 19, 20 years. And I have an 18-year-old daughter who's at New York University, a 17-year-old son who's a senior, and then a 7-year-old daughter. And so family is extremely important to me, kind of understanding, where my grandparents came from, what my parents dealt with, and then how that kind of cascades down to me. And as far as, what I stand for in terms of values, and I think accountability is important, but also, vision, right? And for me, it's always been a vision of what does it look like if everyone has an opportunity to be their best selves. Mm-hmm. And in some ways that does exist, but in other ways, we put up barriers that are so high that by the time people cross them, they're exhausted, right?
Yeah.
So you want to create a world where people can really explore who they are, what's best about them, and then you get to, and if you do it right, then you get to see a much better world. So for me, that's extremely important. There's a Star Tribune article that was written about me, and an elected official said I have a gentle soul, and I was talking to my mom about that, and she laughed and she said, "Yeah, until someone messes with you." That wasn't the word she used, but until someone messes with you, right? So I generally, get along pretty well with people until people come out of pocket or they try to do something that harms me or harms the community. So there's that part of me that, I see a lot of that in my son. He's very soft-spoken, very gentle with like his younger sister. He really cares, but if someone does something, then you see a different side of him, because he's, protecting those that he cares about. So that's a part of me, I guess.
Yeah, I think I would sum that up with like the passion for the job or the position that you're carrying or holding. It'll come out different when people mess it up.
Yes.
Try to do something different.
Yeah.
Can you tell us, where did you grow up at?
So I spent the first 10 years of my life in Illinois, in a suburb called Rolling Meadows. So it's a northwest suburb of Chicago. And I moved to Minnesota when I was 10. Lived in Minneapolis briefly. I don't know if it was 6 months to a year. And then we moved out to a suburb called Plymouth. And once I graduated high school, then I went to a college, Northwestern University. So I wanted to get back to Illinois because I missed family and everything. So I went to Northwestern, which is in Evanston, Illinois. And then after that, I came back to Minnesota. So
Evanston is where they filmed Mean Girls. Little factoid. I've been there too. It's a cool little.
I can see it. Yeah.
Sorry, that was so irrelevant.
No, I can see it though.
I think I'm gonna kick myself off this podcast. I don't know who gave me a microphone.
So how did you get started in politics?
Yeah, that's interesting. So I went to actually. When I was younger, I thought my career path would be, college, law school, then some practice, and then, and then a politician. Because I went to undergrad and got a political science degree, but I actually went to law school and then decided it wasn't for me. Then went in a different direction. Started my own business and then personal trainer actually, and then that industry changed. So then I went and worked for a company, Boston Scientific, and realized that for me to go to the next level, I would need to go get an MBA. So went and got an MBA, and then it was in the course of going to some event, I met someone who was part of the African American DFL caucus, and they invited me to come on as treasurer. I came on as treasurer, and then I realized that the caucus could use some work in terms of leadership. So we took that over. Some people would say hostily. It is what it is. We won. So we took that over, put new leadership in, and then we were able to start the African American DFL Youth Mentor Program. And what we did was, and this is how I met actually Artiste, right, is we got kids from the community, trained them in how to canvas, door knock, and then we got them $15 an hour, paid them $15 an hour, something along those lines. And then they would go out and they would door knock for different electeds, so Senator Champion and Representative Omar, and then Melvin Carter was kind of one of our crowning achievements, right? So people kind of started to know me through that program. And at the same time, I would go to the Capitol from time to time just to hear some of the issues up there. And then I realized, and then I got involved with the Budget Advisory Commission in Brooklyn Park. And then I realized that, maybe the city needs a different type of leadership where we're going. And I also knew I had these relationships. So that all that at the same time kind of pulled me in to politics and then into running for office. So it was kind of a gradual. And then once it hit, though, everything really sped up because I got involved with the caucus in 2013. And then, 10 years later, was mayor, coming from a whole different background. So,
you think of any? I know, it sounds like it wasn't a plan from way back for you to get into political leadership, but can you think of any experiences or memories that may have played a role in inspiring you to pursue this?
I'm from Illinois, so before I was introduced to Martin Luther King, my father introduced me to Marcus Garvey and Malcolm X. And so for me, it was always, what does it look like if, communities that are struggling govern themselves or have a bigger voice and not govern themselves, but have a much bigger voice in governing themselves. So my dad and my mother used to have conversations with me on politics, and they would challenge me quite a bit. And in addition, Chicago, I was there when Harold Washington was elected, and I was there when he passed as well. And he was a seminal figure in Chicago politics in that, back then you would have the South Side and parts of the West Side just wouldn't get trash service on time. They wouldn't get streets would not get plowed, and people were cut out from getting jobs And when he got in, you heard the community talking about, they finally picked up the trash, and now stuff's getting plowed, and there was such a pride. So watching him grow up had a big influence on me in terms of what a mayor could do to just help the community, right, to be a voice for the community. And Harold Washington is seen as kind of a big city mayor, but if you listen to him speak, he was brilliant. There was a mixture of academic and policy wonkiness there, but then he could talk to anybody on the street. So he was very important to my development as well. And that kind of stuck with me over the years.
Got it. Awesome. Thank you.
What are the issues that matter the most to you and your community?
Yeah, I would say in Brooklyn Park, and our city is gonna be getting more and more involved in this. I think one of them is, people talk about affordable housing, and there's new affordable housing, and then there's naturally occurring affordable housing. And some of that is just, maybe older homes, or it could be, we have a place called Huntington Place in Brooklyn Park that 2,500 to 3,000 people live there. It's the second largest in the state, right? It's larger than the city of Osceola, the population there is. And for some of those, the infrastructure is crumbling. So just imagine, the legislature and the governor are talking about allocating a large amount of money probably to help with new development of affordable housing, right? But let's say, hypothetically, we develop that, but in 5 years, the naturally occurring, all that infrastructure kind of just continues to crumble more and more. Well, in some ways, you're back where you started, right? You need the investment to fix it. So one thing that, is important to us is making sure that the naturally affordable housing that's already there is brought up to date. That helps the city a lot. That helps how the city sees itself. It helps with property values for everybody. The other thing is crime is crime and how we deal with crime in Brooklyn Park is important. And we have a police chief, Chief Bruley, that I think is I believe is doing the right things and making the right moves. But we also have an opportunity to have some more resources out there around mental health, to have more resources around violence interrupters. So basically people who work with the community to de-escalate violence, build a rapport with them, and then begin to map out some of the issues and know people on a personal basis so that, let's say you see a kid, he's 12 years old, for some reason he's truant, right? Maybe the mother's going through something. Well, and then rather than, what we see often is somebody breaking up the family or the state kind of breaking the family up. Well, what if you have a situation where you have a violence interrupter or one of those resources, reach out to the mother, gets the mother the help she needs, help get the child gently placed with a grandparent or another family member, right? And then get the kid the help they need. And then the mother comes back when she's ready. And now you've got a kid that is healthy, the family is healthy, and they're not involved with the state or the system, right? So for me, that's very important. I think that model is extremely important in the city. Most of the residents in the city seem to really care about that. And then development, people want, in Brooklyn Park, people want more restaurants. They also want more infrastructure in terms of places to shop, in terms of businesses out there. But for us, one of the opportunities is for us to make sure that as that's developed, Brooklyn Park is anywhere from 58 to 65% people of color. Depends on who you ask, what survey you looked at. But it's making sure that the new businesses, those opportunities are offered and look like the community that's there, right? So not just POC, but it's got to be more and more representative of what the community looks like. So people are having opportunities to build wealth together. And then the infrastructure, the opportunities there for shopping and food appeal to the people that live there. So that's a model that we're working on. We haven't really seen it. So we've got to come up with creative ways to create that.
So could you tell us what the biggest challenge is for Brooklyn Park is facing right now?
Yeah, so I mean the short to long term one is going to be just permanent crime reduction, right? But I would say the most imminent for me is Huntington Place, because the reality is Huntington Place is symbolic of much of the apartment infrastructure along the Zane corridor. So companies historically have gotten in there and they haven't tried to do anything to build the infrastructure, so the plumbing, the walls, even something like the refrigerator, they just haven't, or updating their systems to be able to handle, tracking, problem areas, right? So they haven't really put the infrastructure in there. They've kind of come in there and they've bought it. They said, hey, it's affordable housing. We're not going to invest much here. Well, now the bill is coming due. And so, especially for Huntington Place, it's how do we get the funding to make sure that infrastructure is actually addressed? Because the problem is if that infrastructure goes downhill, it becomes a livability issue. When it's a livability issue, people generally stop caring, right? And then they start struggling to deal with other problems, and that kind of cascades into other issues, right? So for me, it's helping, and I think, Aon owns Huntington Place, and I think Aon is working actively to figure that out. So part of it is, what can we do as a city to support Aon's efforts, without stepping over the bounds of these are privately owned properties, right? Mm-hmm. So how do we not step over those bounds and help as much as possible to get them the resources they need? But also, I think, and this is difficult because people have historically looked at the north suburbs and kind of written us off. Well, I'm there now, and I don't like being written off. Mm-hmm. So it's, we have 5 state electeds that live in Brooklyn Park. I'm not going to name them, but it's 2 state senators and it's 3 state reps. And so how do we get them to help us inform the rest of the state that naturally occurring affordable housing probably needs to be allocated? I think there's $100 million, right? It probably needs to be allocated much more because there's a long-term return on investment and it's an imminent issue. It's urgent. So how do we get the word out about that so that we can actually get it addressed? So that's very important this term, this session.
Yeah, and I think like optics-wise, if I was a strategist, it's like investing money in things like that. People see it; they can observe the investment, and that reflects well in leadership. So like strategy-wise, that makes sense.
It does, right? Because the problem is, part of the problem, and I don't, some of these legislators don't live in our area. Right, and they don't live in areas. And a lot of them don't live in areas that are dealing with these issues. So it's kind of sitting down, like with them, like you said, saying, "Hey, listen, if I live in a certain city and I know that there's areas where it's crumbling, people don't necessarily want to live there, but you as a state are saying, well, that's part of the housing stock, and then they see new housing stock go up, they're going to say, well, what about? Do we stop caring about this stuff, right?" And there's not enough money or capacity out there, especially given interest rates, for developers to suddenly create enough affordable housing to meet the affordable housing gap, or not even affordable, just the housing gap. And then for us to say, forget the naturally occurable housing, we're going to build more, right? We don't need that. The dollars aren't out there for that, right? So it just it doesn't send the right message, but the new stuff is always exciting. But the reality is that affordable housing infrastructure has got to be shored up because it's going to be there. People are going to live there, right? And you don't want to create places where, those who are struggling the most go there, and then they get taken advantage of other people in that area because it's dilapidated so much that you're creating this environment where problems can happen. Like that's not good policy, and nobody wants to be back at the legislature 6 to 10 years from now saying, by the way, we told you so, but now we need more assistance with this. Right?
Yeah. Briefly, this just popped into my head, and I don't know much about this topic. It's kind of hard to find information on it, but there's something about like private equity firms withholding current housing units to create a artificial demand by holding back supply. Is that an issue in the state or like in Brooklyn Park?
I don't know if it's an issue in the state. I'm a business person, so the problem with that argument, and it may be happening in some isolated cases, the problem with that argument is that it assumes that private equity doesn't want to make money. So if I take units off the market, those units are sitting there. And what a lot of people who would make that argument are forgetting is that there's a certain return on investment required for that, and there's investors that investors have to report to. So if I've got idle stock hitting it and there's nobody paying for it, nobody filling it, right? Then that just doesn't make any good business sense whatsoever. Sure. What people may be thinking is that because interest rates are high, developers are pulling back a little bit because they're unsure. If you buy something at a higher interest rate, it's harder for you to make your profit back when interest rates go lower or when things kind of level out. So they may be pulling back a little bit saying, hey, inflation, interest rates are up. We just don't know. So we need some more incentives to do that, right? So that may be what they're referring to,
Okay.
which is a very real thing. But I think some of that the government can help step in and help coordinate things or help with some of those costs. And some of it, the marketplace has to figure out how to address those issues. In many times, this is the last thing I'll say, it may be higher interest rates, but there may be companies out there, and there are, that will say, we're going to continue to build because if we build it during these higher interest rates, we have a competitive advantage versus those who have not built it. And maybe we have to pass those costs along to the consumer, but we're going to build it so that we have the space and we're positioned to do it, right? So it's a balancing act. But, I don't think it's something where you go out to developers and you start blaming them because they're getting their money from somebody.
Yeah.
And that person that's getting that money is saying, and sometimes it's pensions, right? Or just some middle class person that says, I want to retire at a certain date, right? Whatever the case, and sometimes it's millionaires, right? But whatever the case, they have to respond to somebody else who's saying, I got to get my money back, otherwise we have a problem. I may not be able to do the things I need to do.
Yeah.
So it's more complicated, I think,
Sure.
than someone saying, I'm going to hold back to create artificial demand.
Okay.
It wouldn't make financial sense.
Sure. Right. Yeah, and I don't know much on the topic. It sounds like something that would piss me off if I didn't read further into it.
Yeah.
So yeah, that balance thing makes sense to me.
I mean, there are situations, and I don't want to get into it because some of this is local politics, and I don't want to call out any cities, but there's cities where there have been some regulations that have been pushed in terms of, trying to protect renters from being taken advantage of. And so I think there's some situations where there's some developers that look at that and they say, well, I don't know if that makes financial sense given my particular business model. I was going to build, I'm not going to build now, right? But that's a business decision. That's not me trying to punish you. That's me saying, my model says X, Y, and Z. That doesn't make sense for my model. I'll lose money on that model.
Sure.
Right. So that's kind of what I'm hearing and what I'm seeing.
Sure. Yeah. Yeah, that adds up to me. I guess I'm not the authority on anything, so except for this office, that's my realm. Darlene, if you want to do the last two.
I think what I'm gonna do is just jump down to the last one because I think he kind of hit the first one.
Yeah.
What do you hope to achieve in your time as being the mayor?
Yeah, I think those top issues, right? So if we have for me, I'm very aware, I grew up, born in 78. And so I saw what happened in the 90s with the prison industrial complex. And that just tore through my community, especially when I was in Illinois. It just tore through my community, and then I saw it tear through communities here. So I think leaving a long-term solutions or a set of solutions or system in Brooklyn Park where we are not criminalizing people, we're actually getting ahead of the problem and fixing it so that people, rather than worried about going to jail for X, Y, and Z, they're more concerned about what union am I going to try to get an apprenticeship with so I can be 28 making $40 an hour, which is insane, but some of the unions are doing it, right? So I think that's a huge one because I think that will unlock a ton of potential and help keep families together. That's important. And then I think with the apartment complexes and that naturally occurring affordable housing, somehow helping bolster that infrastructure. I don't think we can completely meet the need, but having a strong impact as to where people are comfortable moving into naturally affordable, occurring affordable housing. There's no stigma attached with it. And in fact, because of some of the resources we brought, there's positive outcomes that are associated with that. And the last thing is development. So Brooklyn Park has traditionally been one of the centers that the state puts people for affordable housing. Well, with that comes certain costs, right, that you don't see in a Minnetonka or in Edina, and we don't have the type of economy a Minneapolis or St. Paul has. So for example, our commercial property values in Brooklyn Park are $2 billion. Up the street is $4 billion in Maple Grove, right? Bloomington is about $5 billion. I don't even want to talk about Minneapolis, St. Paul. but it's huge, right? So how do we close some of that gap? Because when we close that commercial, that's tax revenue that we can use for the things that we need, if it's youth programming, streets, whatever, right? We need to help close that gap. So that's the legacy I'd want to leave behind, because I think it would leave a legacy of a massive amount of opportunity for the people that live in Brooklyn Park while they're safe.
Awesome. Yeah, thank you so much again for coming in. But yeah, I wish you the best of luck with your term, and I maybe we'll have you back sometime if you do have time for us. But yeah,
and congratulations on winning your election.
Thank you.
We forgot the important part to congratulate.
No.
Yes,
Thank
yes,
you.
no.
Yeah. And I'm happy to come back. I've known Artis for a while and what she's done, and I think programs like this are extremely important, because I think to your question about housing, right? I think a lot of people think of it from one angle. There's an extreme left angle where people just think the developer should build it and take the haircut, and then there's people really far on the right who just say, hey, you got to have this type of credit score to live here, and if you don't have it, you don't deserve any type of housing, right? I think people need to understand there's these different options, right, so that we can actually solve these issues, because at the end of the day, nobody wants to see homelessness, and we want young families and seniors to be able to have a place to live and do the things they need to do. So thank you for having this program.
Yeah, thank you so much. And